Trinity Lighting welcomes you to our store
at 123 Western Main Road, St. James.
Trinity Lighting carries a wide range of bulbs such as incandescent, halogen, CFL, and LEDs for any application. We are specialized in light bulbs and parts for medical, marine, residential, and commercial use. Contact us today at 868-628-8373. Our professional team is ready to assist you with all your lighting needs.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. It's Thursday night, and we're here, Corpus Christi holiday, and we're doing the Citizens Union. What should be a 2-hour show. Excuse me if I look distracted. I have a responsibility to send out notifications to 20,000 people broken up in groups of 256 on WhatsApp, and I'm 3/4 way through. It used to be we had just enough time while the ads were running, but now we have far more followers, and we probably could use some more ads to fill up that space. So if you are somebody that would like to benefit from the massive numbers that watch these shows, please contact Felicia Hola at 769-4590. The Citizens Union of Trinidad and Tobago was created to protect our members from private and public sector abuse. We go above and beyond for people who are not our members from time to time, and you will hear more and more of those stories as we do these shows Thursday by Thursday. We also have a small segment at the end of the show that is dedicated to the business affiliates, those organizations that pay advertising, and you'll see some of them at the start of the show, you'll see some more at the end, and they pay advertising, but they also offer deals, discounts, and specials to Citizens Union members, and Citizens Union members give them their business. It's a synergistic approach. It is our proof of concept. And let me say good night and thank all of you for joining. Normally on a Thursday, the intention is that Felicia Hola would co-host together with Ian Griffith, who you all should know by now, and I'll be introducing Ian shortly. Felicia is unavailable tonight, and I'm holding on for her. But our plan is to get far more of our members, to get you familiar with them, and this is an opportunity for that to happen. Joining me now on set is somebody that we say doesn't need any introduction. Every week we give him a new title. This week he is the Chief Executive in charge of taking all the calls for all the issues that need solving. Ian is the head of that team that responds to the issues that our members have. Good evening, Ian Griffith.
Hi, good evening, Philip, and to all the viewers, or wherever you are, and for those who may be seeing this on a replay tomorrow or in the days to come. Tonight's show, it's a difficult show to probably digest on a holiday like today, but that's just coincidental. It involves our guest is Julie Ali, and she's going to relate her story in a minute. But just to give a brief background, in 2019, her husband was working on a fishing vessel in Sea Lots, and an incident occurred that resulted in the vessel becoming inflamed, and subsequent to that, her husband was taken to the hospital and he succumbed to the injuries due to extensive burns on his body. So with that, I'm going to introduce Julie Ali, and she's going to walk you through her story, what she has experienced and what she's experiencing in terms of getting past this process with her 2 young children as a single mother, going through the process of working through the issues with OSHA to get some redress at the end of the day, whether it's based on negligence or lack of safety preparedness of vessels operating and persons being employed to do work, and there are no safety standards in place. With that, I would like to introduce Julie Alley. Good night, Julie.
Good night, Mr. Griffiths.
Good
Good night,
night.
Mr.
How are you?
Alexander.
Good night, Julie.
I'm fine,
Pleasure
thank
to
you.
meet you under these
Hi.
terrible circumstances.
My husband, David Ali, he worked at CUTT Dry Docks. He was a welder. Unfortunately, he got into an explosion. Subsequent to that, he passed away. It hasn't been easy. It's very difficult dealing with it emotionally. It's a lot of trauma. This is something that was never highlighted. No news, nothing, no spotlights of anything. It did, however, made a Facebook post. That's how I caught up with it. Subsequent to this tragedy, I was never contacted by any boat owners, nobody. I had to go fishing around to get all of this information that I now have. OSHA, on the other hand, they were unaware of the situation. I had reached out to them 3 days prior to his funeral, and they took up the matter. They did a length of investigation. It's only recent that they gave me this compiled file to hold here. There's a lot of questions that I have, a lot of unanswered questions. I want to know that with this file that they now give me here, where do I go with this? Where is the directive?
Julie, sorry.
Uh-huh.
I'm waiting for you to pause because I want to jump in about 900 questions. Everything that you're saying, giving me questions that I want to ask. I want to ask you, when did this occur?
On the 18th of the 11th month, 2019.
What month is that? November?
Yes.
18th of November 2019.
Yes.
A boat caught fire in Sealots and your husband succumbed to his injury. Anybody else or just him?
Just him. Just him.
Okay. And you saying it never made news? It wasn't covered anywhere?
No.
And so could I ask you what your husband was doing on the boat? Was his profession?
He was a welder. So he was attending to weld a bracket.
On the boat?
Yes, on the bilge of the boat, which is located on the engine room. And when a spark, it was a fishing trawler.
A fishing trawler.
Yes.
So he was employed as a welder on a fishing trawler that caught fire. Did the fire have anything to do with the welding?
Basically, yes. On OSHA's findings, yes. It was a spark that ignited, that caused the fire.
Okay, I want to tell you, please accept my condolences. I want to say that I hate that this is how lives are treated in my country. And Ian will tell you now that we have this information, and I'm sure he's spoken to you behind the scenes when he and I meet. We will see what we could do to address this further. And I just want to put that in there because you said it too easily that it almost happened in passing, and I wasn't happy with that because he's a human being and his life should matter, and I wanted that accounted for. Sorry for the interruption. That's what I interrupted you for.
Subsequent to that, I have been fishing around for information. Just happened, he left home, he went to work, and I just got a call that there was an explosion. He was injured. When I got to the hospital, he was already sedated. I never got a chance to speak to him. I was completely lost. I had to gather information. It was terrible. It still is, because I'm dealing with this still day to day. I don't know what else I can say. Um, I don't know. I'm lost here.
Okay, Julie, yes, I know you've shortened a very arduous process from 2019 to 2022, today's date. As Philip alluded to, you've made it sound almost simple and glossed over it. So I'm going to just ask you a few questions. I think that will help you along. When the incident occurred, you said you got a phone call and obviously you went to the hospital. Which
Yes.
hospital did you have to go to?
Port of Spain General.
Right. Was he?
When I went,
Go ahead.
um, when I went in general, I was approached by 4 different doctors. At the scene, they walked me through what had happened to him. I am some hours after. Um, I was in total shock and disbelief. I completely traumatized. I can't tell you. I can't explain how I felt at that point in time. It's bringing back a lot of memories. That's why I'm sounding a type of way. Um, when I did see him, though, I couldn't believe I didn't know who this person was. He was already sedated. He was asleep. He was just lying there, you know. That was it. No answers. Nobody reached out to me. No employer. Nobody. I had to just function, you know. Going to the hospital, waiting to find out if anybody would come forward. Nothing like that. And, you know, subsequent to that, the Tuesday, his condition just kept deteriorating. The Wednesday, he took a grafting surgery. And the Thursday morning, I got a call that his condition had deteriorated. And that was it. He was pronounced dead. Still, I was never contacted. I didn't know where to start to find any information or how to approach the situation. You know, I kept going to the police station. I went all over, even to the fire services, trying to get some, you know, heaven ahead as to what took place, what happened. And I wrote to OSHA electronically on the 29th. That was the week after his funeral. And they said that they would investigate. Well, I had to do a lot of following up with them because they never got back to me in any way. I kept calling, writing, sending emails, and eventually they told me that the file was ready. That's when they sent me, well, I wrote again to them and I applied for this file that I now have. There are a lot of unanswered questions that I still have as to, you know, the findings and all of that. I understand that it took a long while, a lengthy period of time, because they had to do their fire investigations and police investigations properly. But I would like to know also what would the findings on the file, you know, what is their intention? What do they propose to do in a situation like this? You know, this is my question tonight.
Okay, so in terms of the sequence of events, I'm going to either relate or maybe you can just interject as required, just for clarity. So the incident would have occurred on the 18th of November 2019. You
Yes.
received the OSHA report in 2022, June of 2022?
On the 24th of May, 2022, this year.
All right. So from November 2019 to May 2022. That's the timeline between the accident and receiving of the report.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So I read extracts of the report, so I'm just going to, you know, uh, say it so the viewing audience can, and you can hear some of the timelines, and then you could interject.
Mm-hmm.
What resulted in the fire was that Mr. David Ali was welding a bracket onto a water pump in the vessel in the engine room. And prior to that, the vessel would have been quote unquote cleaned, and there may have been residue of diesel in the area where the welding occurred. The vessel actually is owned by a Mr. Richard Gardner, and the registration number is TFC A1395, and it's named Symbol. From the report, Mr. David Ali has worked with Mr. Gardner previously in the same capacity as a contract welder. So there's a history of a working relationship between the owner of the vessel and the late David Ali. But there was another gentleman who was assisting Mr. Ali. His name is Hanif, I believe it's Mohammed, who was also assisting with the welding. He was in the vessel at the time when the quote unquote implosion took place based on a spark from the welding that may have ignited with residual diesel in the vessel. Mr. Hanif and Mr. Ali were taken to the hospital. Mr. Ali was placed in an intensive care unit, and Mr. Hanif Mohammed, he was treated. He may have been discharged subsequently. The report doesn't indicate they know of his whereabouts at present. And Mr. David Ali succumbed to his injuries as a result of the implosion on the 21st of November. The incident occurred on the 18th of November, and the report findings indicated he succumbed to 39.5% total body surface burns. So that is what Julie was alluding to in terms of going to the hospital and most likely saying she's not recognizing her husband. But then you indicated you had difficulty in contacting OSHA, but eventually it did contact you, and they began the process of the report. Again, from the
Yes.
report, what I noticed is that they requested a police report of the incident and was instructed that they would have to request that from the Commissioner of Police, which was subsequently done by OSHA. The person assigned to do the investigation by OSHA was a Mr. Kerwin Durity, and he eventually received the police report from the police. He subsequently requested a report from fire services, and he eventually got an official report from fire services that no official report was made by fire services of the incident or any photographs taken. I'm going to repeat that. Fire services submitted an official report indicating they do not have an official report of the incident of the event on the day of the 18th of November 2019, and they have no photographs. No photographs were taken. Keeping in mind, fire services responded when an alarm was put out that there was a fire taking place at Production Avenue Sea Lots, including the vessel Symbol. At this juncture, Julie, what are your responses to the fact that there isn't an official report from fire services, even though they were one of the first respondents, probably before the police, to the scene where the vessel was ablaze?
I would say that I'm completely disappointed upon hearing that. I didn't read that part of the report. I read the police report. I read what OSHA findings were. I also have some pictures, some photographs that I think was presented by the police themselves. So I don't know if that would work in place of fire. So I I can't answer that. Why they didn't, I don't know why. But that is really highly unusual for fire services not to take any photographs of the boat. The vessel was burnt really terribly.
Yes, the vessel was engulfed in flames.
So I can't seem to understand how.
Right. So, I mean, to the listening viewing public, fire services responds to an incident in which a vessel is ablaze, and no report was taken, and no photographs were taken. And they submit an official report to stipulate that they have no official report. So that is something that somebody will have to address. Maybe fire services can clarify that. But in terms of you going forward with conducting an investigation where you can know what to do with the findings of the report, and as you alluded to earlier, how to move forward, there is a gap there between two entities responding, the police and fire services, and only the police have a report that you alluded to and some photographs as evidence of having had an investigation. But subsequent to the OSHA investigation taking place, were you kept in the loop during the course of the investigation?
No, I wasn't. I had to make a lot of attempts to call to contact them. I even sent a lot of emails requesting to know like how long is this going to take. I had to be in constant communication with them from time to time. And finally, I got an email that it has been completed, that I had to write to get a copy of the file, which I did. It took me approximately like about 5 months before I received this file at hand. And that's my question. I don't seem to understand. Their findings is that they are saying that it's recommended for prosecution, but what are they going to do and on behalf of that, because they are health and safety, they should be responsible for being first responders in situations like this where a vessel didn't have anything in place. There weren't fire extinguishers. What about a fire blanket? This could have been something that I think could have been avoided. There wasn't any safety upon this vessel, no safety officers, anything like that, to come into question. And I understand their findings, but what are they going to do? How are they going to address the situation? And that's my question.
It's a good question. One of the difficulties OSHA referred to in their report is that when they commenced their investigation, they tried contacting the Ministry of Agriculture, but several calls went unanswered until they had to send an email to Honorissa Lucky, Director of Fisheries Acting. And that is because the Ministry of Agriculture Fisheries Division has a role to play in terms as to where the vessel is and the type of activity that the vessel conducts, which is fishing, which Mr. Gardner is the owner of the vessel. So there is a ministry also involved in this, because Mr. Gardner is not operating a vessel at some shoreline area around the coastal sections of Trinidad on his own. He seems to be operating a licensed vessel under, quote unquote, the watchful eye of the Ministry of Agriculture, but more specifically Fisheries Division located at Sealots. So they also weren't quite responsive to OSHA. And that may have contributed in part to OSHA having difficulty to compile all the requisite information. Notwithstanding, they did eventually contact Mr. Gardner and began the investigation with him to get an account as to what transpired on that day what instructions he gave to Mr. Ali and Mr. Mohammed, what requests he had of them to effect repairs of the vessel, and what safety measures he had in place to protect against an incident. He indicated to OSHA, again, looking at the report, it's 172 pages. It's very tedious to read. But one of the things he indicated, he had a water hose connected to a tap somewhere on the jetty, running to the inside of the engine room of the vessel, and a 5-pound CO2 extinguisher. And that actually is a very critical point, because that was the extent of the safety he had effected on the vessel, having contracted someone to effect welding. But later on in the program, we can then go into some of the findings of OSHA with regard to safety requirement, because that is their responsibility. So the question that is begged, that one has to ask now is, what requirements, if any, do vessels operate with as registered fishing vessels? And I say the word under cautiously the purview of the Fishery Division CLOTs. Because a garden hose and a 5-pound extinguisher is not adequate for a vessel. And I believe it had approximately 2,000 gallons of diesel in its storage tanks. So if an event were to occur, that would not meet the requirements of adequate safety. So that's another problem OSHA discovered in their report. But specifically to you, you have 2 young children, as far as I was aware. Right. And how old are they?
The eldest is 22 and the youngest is 13.
13. How, as a mother, did you and are addressing the demise of your father in such a manner? What was their reaction? And I guess emotionally, psychologically, having to know what happened to their father.
That day I received the news that he had passed away. I didn't know how I was going to respond to them, how I was going to tell them. That alone, I can't begin to tell you, because I don't even know myself how I did it. But I came home and I told them. It took a toll on them in every aspect of their lives, and even up to now. My younger daughter was sitting the SEA. She didn't pass for her first choice, I can tell you that. It took a really, really terrible toll on both of them. They were heartbroken, they were disappointed, they searched for answers, they looked at me for answers. I didn't even have answers to give to them. I must say, without family around, without my parents, I don't know how I would have coped with this, really and truly. It was just, everything just happened so quickly, and still they are searching for answers, because they are looking at me, in terms of, finding answers for them, to tell them what happened at the end of the day. How could daddy just go to work and, we get a call and they didn't get to see him. They never got to see him. They just knew that, okay, he died. And that was it. They just saw a coffin, closed, and that was it. That was all. They never got any sort of counseling or anything like that. They depended totally on me for counseling, and my good parents and siblings, and that is what had pulled them through. Like I told you, it was just, it's something that you would never expect to happen, and it happens to you. So there isn't really I can't really tell you how I responded, because I was doing things, and even after I'm finished doing it, then I would know that, okay, yes, I functioned today. I did it, I made it. But it's terrible even now, as we speak. It's not something that, it's not a walk in the park. It's not something that you can say that you fully understand because I'm still coping with it. I can't find words. I don't know sometimes, most of the times, how I'm going to do it. They still break down from time to time because, he was there, everything. He was just that type of father to coach them through everything in life, every aspect. They would talk to him about everything. They were very close to him. So that took a toll on them. It broke their hearts. It also taught them a lot that, this world is very cruel. There are people in this world that, you really, as young girls growing up, and you see things like this happening. Your father just goes to work and boom, this happens. And nobody has the audacity or, the remorse to come and say, well, condolences, or I understand that it's an accident and accidents do happen all the time. Okay. But in the manner, it was just so inhumane to know that a person like this, that he was basically a person who will take his lunch away. He was a kind-hearted person. He was a very good person. There's not anything that I can say bad about him. Everybody has their shortcomings. He wasn't perfect in the eyes of probably, everybody, but to us, his family, to his co-workers, and to be treated that way, I don't know. That just makes you think and ask yourself sometimes, what has Trinidad really become? What? Because I must say Trinidad, because if you're reading the length of the report, these fire officials are saying that they didn't take any photographs and they haven't done their work properly because there isn't anything compiled. Then we have failed as a country. And to know that these young people are coming up and they're seeing these things, and it's a lot of questions. It's just questions upon questions to be answered. But it's difficult. It really is.
Okay, Julia, I understand that, but I don't want to diminish your pain and reliving the incident that occurred. But at this point, I have to, in my mind, connect it to the 4 divers that died recently. And there seems to be a correlation between the two in terms of an incident occurring, lack of information, and in that case, there are 4 wives slash mothers and children who I
Yes.
believe you can relate to much better than probably anybody in the country as to what they are going through and what's ahead of them.
I can relate to what they are going through. When I heard about the incident on the month of March, it was very heartbreaking. It was traumatizing for me. I looked at this not in the sense of just an ordinary citizen, but I looked at this, at the perspective of being a mother, a wife. This is really terrible. I can just imagine what they are going through. I My heart went out to them. It still goes out. I can tell you from my point of view that it's very difficult. It's the hardest thing that you can ever wake up to know that you get up this morning and you pack your husband his lunch, and he just drove to work, and that was it. You're just lost. You're just out there in the wilderness. You're just lost looking for answers, and there is no answer. There's nothing. You just I can't put into words to tell you what they are going through, because I can't even put into words to tell you what I went through. It is very difficult. It's the most hardest. I think it's a wound that never heals, because still now I know that this year would be 3 years since my husband passed away, and I still search for his fingerprints all over. I still search. I still look at the cameras sometime, and I would say, okay, he's driving home now. I would see him walking by. It's not something. It's not easy. It's very difficult. It's the most devastating pain that any human being could go through, especially being a wife. And if you have children, it's difficult because they look for you for answers. And you look to the authorities for answers, and there are no answers because nobody is doing a complete, proper, thorough investigation. So it all boils down back to you being, the strength of everybody around you. That's what I do. I am the strength of them because they would look to me. But at the end of it all, just so many questions to ask and so many unanswered questions. It just brings you back to a point where you lost hope in every aspect of everything around you. Everybody in authority, I don't know. You just have to pray and find a peace and comfort in your heart because it's difficult. It is difficult. But like I tell you, I have first-hand experience with it, and I can just imagine what they're going through. These 4 women and children. It's the most difficult thing that you can ever face.
But one of the main differences between your experience and their experience is that the public was not aware of it until tonight or tomorrow and the days after and the weeks coming. They got a lot of public
Yes,
press.
of course,
And
they got a lot of publicity, I'll say, because of the fact that the company that they were involved with, it's really a strategic company. Mine, on the other hand, I must say that if it wasn't for your program, if it wasn't for the this live program tonight, this would have just been something that would have been swept under the carpet, and within time and years, probably nobody would have never found out about it. Um, so I thank you, I thank Mr. Alexander, for having me on this program, because this would have been something that nobody would have ever found out about. Because I've reached out to CNC3. I was told that they would have gotten back to me. They didn't. I made several attempts to reach out to numerous newspapers. But at that point in time, I didn't really have all this information that I now have at hand. But no investigation wasn't ever done via any sort of media. The only thing I had to run with was this clip that I saw circulating on Facebook.
are your children close by to you
No,
physically
not
at the
at the
moment?
moment.
Not at the
No,
moment.
not at the
Okay.
moment.
So they're not reliving the experience with you being live.
No, no.
Was that deliberate?
Yes, it was a bit deliberate because right now they have school tests that is going on and they are studying, and this
Okay.
this this drama, yeah. So I try to avoid
Yeah.
them at all costs from this night.
And that's understandable. Satish, if you're there, if you can just put up the 2 newspaper clips regarding the divers. Okay, thank you. All right, there are some findings in the report. Satish, I'll try to get it to you, and maybe you can put it up as a link subsequent to this program so persons looking at it can read it. But it's short, so I'm just going to read a few things that we found in that very thick report that was eventually made available to Mrs. Ali in May of this year. Mr. Richard Gardner operates a vessel named Simba with a crew of 3, including Mr. Hanif Mohammed, 67 years of age. Mr. Hanif Mohammed requested a bracket is welded to the water pump. Mr. David Ali, a contract welder known to Mr. Gardner and has worked with him on several occasions, was contracted to effect the welding of the bracket to the water pump. Mr. Gardner indicated he has a hose with running water and a 5-pound carbon dioxide extinguisher placed in the engine room in the event of an emergency. Mr. Gardner said he is safety conscious because safety was part of his job functions when he worked at TSTT, and he routinely conducted monthly safety drills with his crew. So I would like to pause here. His crew comprises of Mr. Hanif Mohammed and two other persons, but his crew doesn't comprise of Mr. David Ali. So therefore, he would not be conducting routine monthly safety drills with Mr. David Ali. And that would suggest that he needed to exercise a higher level of responsibility when he contracted Mr. Ali to effect welding on the vessel, to communicate to him and demonstrate that his past experience working TSTT is applicable. But I digress there. Mr. Mohammed and Mr. Ali entered the engine room at approximately 4 p.m. to effect welding, and a spark fell into the bilge, and an explosion occurred. Mr. Mohammed moved to the deck and began throwing buckets of water to extinguish the fire. Smoke began emanating from the engine room. During this time, Mr. Ali emerged from the engine room. He was severely burnt and was placed under a tap of running water. So let's dissect that. You immediately see the inadequacy of the garden hose, because Mr. Mohammed is trying to extinguish a fire on a vessel with buckets of water. The next thing one notices, which is strange to me, is that Mr. Ali would be placed under a tap of running water with severe burns. And we will address that again in the lack of safety and preparedness of operating on a vessel. Fire services and the Trinidad Police Service arrived approximately 30 minutes after the fire explosion occurred. For those of you who may not know Port of Spain well, Fire Services head office to Sea Lots is not a distance that should take 30 minutes of traveling time, with the benefit of blaring sirens. But it's 30 minutes later they subsequently arrived. Fire services took approximately 2 hours to extinguish the fire using approximately 2,245 gallons of water. The vessel had 2,000 gallons of diesel stored in its tanks at the time of the fire. Some of the salient points I'm going to just read out. There were no safety systems developed to safeguard against the hazards associated with welding on the vessel, or procedures to clean areas after the use of oil and grease, or testing of the area for the presence of gas or hydrocarbons to reduce the risk of a fire or explosions, or personnel trained to stand by and monitor sparks, or presence of fire-resistant materials, example, a fire blanket in the work area, or PPE assigned to Mr. Mohammed or Mr. Ali, or records the extinguisher was routinely serviced. So when I alluded to earlier, when I made reference to Mr. Ali being placed below a tap of running water, and you begin to see the shortcomings of the adequacy of safety on the vessel, you would note specifically the absence of a fire blanket. And I don't think water being poured onto a person who received extensive burns, and that was referred to subsequently by the medical practitioner as 39.5% total body surface burns. That water was the appropriate thing to apply at that occasion. Now, I don't think those findings and what I just read, Ms. Ali, brings you any relief, probably some more grief. You want to share your comments on what I just read?
Yes. Now I've read through on the same particular I've read that through, and I think that when they said that there were a garden hose in place, a garden hose is something that it's for gardening. It's not for welding on in a vessel. I think that they have failed. Mr. Gardner have failed. He has failed tremendously in securing the safety for his workers. And that alone should show that, okay, a garden hose. This man has so many failures in this boat. If there were fire extinguishers that were available, why didn't they use it? Because it was in the bilge of the boat, which is the engine room. No fire extinguishers was used. He is claiming that there was fire extinguishers there, but why did you reach for a garden hose? There are so many questions, so many questions. Another thing is no fire blankets in place. And he did say that every month he has fire drills and safety drills, but it's undocumented. So I want to know if the captain was somebody that was in his it was somebody that he has said, well, yes, the captain is working for him. He didn't mention Mr. Ali. So the captain didn't know about this safety route that you had, you know. The captain's supposed to know, okay, I'm here working with him and there's a fire. Let's see, let me get the fire extinguisher or let me throw a blanket on him. There was nothing in place, absolutely nothing in place. For him to come out of there with that intense burn on his skin, it seemed to me as though he was trapped under the engine room, and he solely wait on the captain to, I don't know, come and open the door or something, because if there is an explosion and the door was shut, I assume, I don't know, things are just not adding up as much as you read into this. It's just not adding up. It's what if, and I don't know. But to me, it's total failure on Mr. Gardner's behalf. And I think that it's something that should have, picked up again, as I told you, after this investigation is completed, what are the steps that they are going to take against this vessel? This vessel is operating, this vessel is operating as normal. And at the point in time of this incident, there was no insurance. It had no insurance whatsoever. So how can you be in the water with no insurance? And these are things that I have documented. It's compiled in the file.
Right. So you actually touched upon a point I was about to make.
Yes.
I do not know if Ministry of Agriculture, the Division of Fisheries, that regulate the activity of fishing vessels, if there's a requirement that they operate with insurance for their crew. So that's a question I don't know, but it's a question that you should ask, because it's a very pertinent question. Now, with respect to Mr. Gardner, has he in any way contacted you, reached out to you, tried to in any way ameliorate your heartache?
I saw Mr. Gardner at the hospital on the day of the autopsy for my husband. On that day, he said that it was his a relative's birthday. Now I am going to view the autopsy for my husband, and you were mentioning there was somebody else with me, and he was mentioning that it's a birthday or something like that, and I just continue walking because you never came to me. So that's when I spotted him, what he looked like. About a year after the incident, Mr. Gardner reached out to me with a portion of shrimp and some fish. And he brought that to me by my house and said that he was sorry for what had happened and that he would like to make some sort of redress. I spoke with Mr. Gardner there and then, and we made some alterations to meet by my attorney, which he did. Now, he went to the attorney and he made an agreement with her, a verbal agreement with her. And she sent him a letter. Actually, it was the agreement that he made. He never responded to her. That was last year, December, sometime in December. I think it was probably the 21st or somewhere there. He never replied to her. Then she sent him another letter this year, March. I think it was the 5th of March or somewhere around there. And he never replied to her. He never responded. And that was the last that I've seen of Mr. Gardner or heard of him.
Okay, so to conclude one point in terms of the findings specific to the adequacy of his quote-unquote safety preparedness, the fire water hose and a 5-pound fire extinguisher is below the approved fire fighting requirements and is inadequate for the operation of a fishing vessel. I just want to repeat that. The fire water hose and a 5-pound fire extinguisher, CO2, is below the approved firefighting requirements and is inadequate for the operation of a fishing vessel. Now, that goes back again to how are these vessels allowed to operate with crew, and they are registered. Okay, so the registration process of a fishing vessel, what does it entail? Is there a requirement not only for the registration of the vessel? Is there any other requirements apart from registration? I know one of the benefits of registration is that as a fishing vessel operator, you derive some benefits in some sort of concessions. And I will just I can think of one at the moment, the acquisition and purchase of, let's say, engines for the vessel. I do not know if there are others in terms of assisting with subsidy for the cost of diesel. But if that's the requirement that you register, you benefit from some sort of subsidy with regard to the purchase. It may be the returning of the portion of the VAT. If that's where it ends, then a lot of fishing vessels are operating in our waters. And there are a lot of wives like yourself whose husbands are out there operating vessels at sea, or in this case, docked, and repairs may be undertaken, and the lack of safety requirements as a requirement, mandatory requirements, another incident will happen. It's not a matter of if, but when.
I think I would like to answer you there. Tell you that these things happen all the time. I think that I probably am the first person to take it so far, but I would like to believe that this is something that is ongoing. It's not the first time, and it definitely wouldn't be the last time, because these people are not being regularized in any way. They have these boats operating, and I don't think that there are anything in place. There are nobody regularizing them. There are nobody checking up on them, because I mean, if a man could go to work in Simba and die, and this boat is still operating, this boat still has, is still bringing in stuff, and business is running as usual. How can we say that this is going to stop where it has never happened before? It has, and it would continue to happen. You know, I think I am probably the only person to speak out on it, because it hit me really, really hard, and I couldn't believe that we live amongst human beings like that, but we do. And I would say that they're not being regularized, one, and they don't care. They really don't. Because I don't think, I think to be a captain, you have to have all these legitimate paperwork in place. I don't think that the captain even was qualified to even be in the water. He was just somebody that, looking for a hustle, and they placed him in a boat. So these things, they never end. They never seem to end. It's just so happened that it happened to me, and I fished around and got all these relevant information, and I'm speaking out on it now. But that's to say that it won't happen again. It probably is happening as we speak. And I don't know, as from tonight, whoever is out there and who's looking on, and they have this similar experience like me, that they can probably reach out and, just talk about it, let it, just spread the word out there that it has happened to them, because I am sure that these things happen to families all over. And it's disappointing, it's heartbreaking. It's very unfair to us as women, with children, to send your husband out to work, honestly, and things like this happen, and it's just being swept under the carpet. And there are authorities, there are big authorities out there that are seeing these things and passing it by. Because I'm telling you that I reached out to national fisheries and all these places, and I indicated to them that there was a debt upon this vessel. There was. And the vessel is still operating, nevertheless, and life goes on. I just have a husband, my children has no father. I have a husband that is dead, and life goes on. And that's living in sweet, sweet TNT. Where there are laws, but it's not being regularized. Nothing is being regularized. When something happens, it's out there. It's on media, and everybody, want to share it and talk about it. But nobody is making a difference. Nobody. And I am sure that there are a lot of women out there like me. A lot of them. I can even tell you that the 4 wives of these divers, they are included in my category. And there are more of them out there like me, like my good self. I know that. I hope that after tonight they come forward, or I hope that this program can enlighten somebody and at least probably help them in some way or the other.
Thank you for that, Julia. I know it's the more you speak, the more difficult it becomes. I'm just going to read the conclusions, well, an abridged version of the conclusions of the report. Mr. Richard Gardner failed to develop and implement safety systems. I repeat, Mr. Richard Gardner, owner of the vessel TFCA 1395, Simba, failed to develop and implement safety systems. That is self-apparent. Your husband is not here. Mr. Richard Gardner, as an employer, failed to ensure for the particular task, welding, as is practically reasonably for the safety, health, and welfare of work for his employees. Mr. Richard Gardner contracted Mr. David Alley to perform a task. So there's a contractual obligation between employee and employer. And is in breach of section 6.1, 622A, 62B, 62D, 13.1A, 23.1, 46.1B of the OSHA Act 88.08, and is recommended he be charged. You began the program by making reference to the breach of those sections that I just read out and the statement he be charged. And you don't know who is going to charge whom. Correct?
In my reply to that, I would say that the length of the investigation, I would like to know, with that time frame that they had this investigation compiled with COVID and all of that, when are they going to charge this vessel? When are they going to compound this vessel? A lot of time has passed, and I grieve to know that, okay, my husband is dead. This vessel is operating as nothing happened. This vessel should have been taken out of the water. This should have been pulled out a long time. So you can't tell me that, okay, they used a garden hose in the first and it's still there working. Somebody else has to die, because I don't know if they have safety in place now. I don't know what is going on with the vessel. All I know is that it's operating. And to me, that is very unfair, because I would say that I had a lot of hopes when I contacted OSH that they would have done something like charge this vessel, compound it, or at least get it off the water. But when I realized that no, it's operating, and it's boldly on advertisement as well. So these things is really heartbreaking to see, and to know that, okay, they have all these evidence, and yet again, it seems as though nobody cares at the end of the day. How long? How long? How? When? Time. Time is of the essence, and time is just flying by. So when I say that I look at push to do something, when I receive this document and I'm seeing here that they are saying they recommend prosecution, but who is going to prosecute him? Who's going to prosecute him? Is it National Fisheries for not having it's not this vessel is not insured? Is it that the OSHA is going to compound this boat, get this boat out of the water? Who is going to do it? I mean, if I didn't take the stand to do it, and what if I don't do it? Who is going to do it? Then this boat just conducts duties as usual, and nobody is. So they give me a file, but I reached out to them and I asked the question, can I speak with somebody from the legal department? They said, well, you'll be contacted back. That was about the same time I got the file, which is like about 2 weeks ago. I haven't been contacted. So again, that's time. That's time again, that's slipping by. So I don't know if there is a expiration date on this. How it works, I don't know. I really doesn't know. In the meantime, all I can do is just wait, as I have been waiting before. But I mean, they concluded that they recommend prosecution. Who is going to prosecute? Are they going to prosecute? Who is going to prosecute? What if Mr. Ali didn't have a wife? What about if nobody did any investigation? Then this vessel would have just been all over, normal, nothing. What if I didn't look for any documents then? What would have they done differently? How many other companies are seeing the same, how many other people are having the same problem where they are saying, yes, prosecute, but who's going to prosecute? Well, I think that they have the first option of doing the prosecution, by getting this boat out of the water.
Well, there are several questions raised and several things that need to be highlighted in terms of your appearance on the show. One, you indicated you reached out to the media and there was no interest, no response, and therefore no interest in your plight. It's not a story, it's a plight. The inordinate amount of time it took for the report to be completed, the length of time for fire services to arrive at the location in Sealots, Production Avenue, the absence of the fire services having an official report and/or photographs, you trying to contact the Fisheries Division without success, or try to contact them without success, the inadequacy of the safety requirements on the vessel, notably a 5-pound CO2 extinguisher and a garden hose, a report that you eventually got that tells you someone needs to be charged, notably the owner of the vessel, the continued operation of the vessel after the incident, who is to, if it's possible, to impound the vessel. What are the mechanisms for redress for you? Is insurance required or is it not required? Is it that vessels operate without insurance within the territorial waters of Trinidad and Tobago? And if the vessel goes beyond the territorial waters, where is the liability, quote unquote, in international waters in the event of an occurrence? So all of those are the questions that we don't have the answers for here tonight. But as Philip alluded to, and he's probably listening and biting at his chops to indicate to you he's going to apply the same amount of passion he did as with the 4 divers that succumbed to an incident that resulted in the loss of their life. And that is one of the reasons why tonight's program, episode 5, is called Fire and Water. 4 persons, quote unquote, drowned, and your husband was burnt, resulting in his death. So it's the loss of 4 husbands by fire and water. Satish, if you can put up the video of the vessel in flames.
Hey. Hey, I get foam, but I find nothing. Hey, I just tell them that that water ain't doing that fire, nothing. It's foam that, a foam that. That a foam that. And just now with my guy explosion because that fucking thing in there. Hey.
And that video has not been seen by the public. And it's the first time since 2019 the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago are seeing. And you having to watch that, have to relive the pain and suffering. In concluding, you want to say anything? Because I think by now you should be out of words, having to look at that video.
When you look at the video, I hear him coughing at the end of the video, and I know that is him coughing, and that's the only last memory of him that I have. At the end, he was coughing because his lung, he had inhaled a lot of chemical and smoke, so he was coughing a lot. That is the only memory that I have of him. That video is very disturbing. I relive that memory ever so often when I think about him and I want to hear his voice, his last. I would listen to him cough in that video. And yeah. It's really something that is really, it's hard to digest. It's the most difficult thing that a wife can face. That's all.
Satish, could you put up the image of the late David Ali? Julie, I want to say thank you for coming on the program tonight and sharing your pain. It is not a story. Having to say what you had to say and to also hear the coughing in the video and see the image of David.
Well, I want to tell you thank you for having me, and I want to tell you thank you because if it wasn't for the Citizens Union, I don't think that video would have ever been shown, or his image. So I want to tell you thank you, and I want to thank Mr. Alexander as well for having this program readily available for people like myself.
And I'll be in contact with you, Julie, and continue to be in contact with you. And we are going to do everything possible we can to take that report and have some action taken.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
Trinity Lighting welcomes you to our store.
At 123 Western Main Road, St. James.
Trinity Lighting carries a wide range of bulbs such as incandescent, halogen, CFL, and LEDs for any application. We are specialized in light bulbs and parts for medical, marine, residential, and commercial use. Contact us today at 868-628-8373. Our professional team is ready to assist you with all your lighting needs.